What's up, guys? Stigo from SGN, back with another episode of Tales of Mortal Kombat, and my man Madota, my man Deejus Johnson. I know you guys probably aren't that excited about this specific game. However, it is important for the future of Mortal Kombat, so I want to talk about it. And I'm not going to dedicate a whole long video to it, but I do want to talk a little bit about it. And we're, of course, going to be talking about Mortal Kombat versus DC, which, in my opinion, and based on what I've seen, pretty much everybody else's opinion, this isn't really a Mortal Kombat game for a few reasons. Of course, number one, because it was versus DC, so there were a lot of limitations to what they could do with the game. And just to name a few of the limitations, well, number one, they didn't have a lot of Mortal Kombat characters because, of course, they had to mix in a lot of DC characters, and the fact that they did have DC characters in there meant that they had very big limitations on what they could do in terms of finishing moves. They weren't able to do fatalities that were done by the superheroes because, of course, Warner Brothers didn't want their superheroes to be having that kind of controversy around them. They wanted them to do heroic brutalities, which is just kind of a cheesy way to have a finishing move, which they probably could have just not put in there in general. And then, of course, the villains had fatalities, but they were pretty garbage. Like there was the Joker fatality where he just, shoots the guy, but they don't actually show it. So it's just really, really dumb. It was just overall, it was just kind of a not that cool, to be honest with you. Like, I get why they did it. They needed to make money. It was the last hope for Mortal Kombat to actually keep on living. And, of course, that did lead to Warner Brothers acquiring the game, and that pretty much did save the Mortal Kombat license. Thankfully, after that, Warner Brothers gave them complete liberty to do whatever they wanted in terms of fatalities and make the game as violent and as brutal as they possibly could. And thanks to that, the Mortal Kombat franchise has become bigger than it ever was. But when it comes to Mortal Kombat vs. DC, I'm going to go ahead and give it a fair review, just like I've done with every other game. When it comes to the presentation, the game is nowhere near as good as Deception, Deadly Alliance, or Armageddon was. I mean, they didn't have a badass intro, and the menus in general, they were just kind of basic. They weren't that good looking, and there was really nothing to talk about in terms of presentation, so not very high quality there. So I'm assuming that they didn't have a great budget, and most of the budget that they'd had went into actually making the game decent, which unfortunately didn't really do well at that either. So I'll talk about that later with the gameplay portion. But when it comes to the roster, it was kind of iffy because they had some of the bigger faces from Mortal Kombat, and they had some of the bigger faces from the DC universe. So kind of pleasing, but also I would really like to see some of the less popular characters that the fans kind of like more, the hardcore fans like more from Mortal Kombat to really be able to make an appearance. But because of the fact that this game was kind of aimed towards the DC universe fans that aren't necessarily familiar with Mortal Kombat, it kind of makes sense for them to put in the most popular characters, the ones that, even though Baraka's there, they added the most iconic characters, I guess you could say, from the old generation. So let me just go ahead and talk about the characters that were there. Of course, there were from the Mortal Kombat side, there was Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Sonya, Shang Tsung, Kitana, Baraka, Kano, Raiden, Liu Kang, and Jax. From the DC Universe side, we had Joker, we had Catwoman, Flash, Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Shazam, Lex Luthor, Deathstroke, and Wonder Woman. So, as I said, some of the bigger faces from both universes mixed into one single game. And of course, the villains were Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat and Darkseid from the DC Universe. Both very, very good choices because they are, in my opinion, the best villains from both universes. Of course, the big issue is they kind of mixed them into one to make Dark Kahn, which in its own right for this specific game wasn't necessarily an awful idea. And unfortunately, Shinnok's transformation in Mortal Kombat X was basically Dark Kahn. If you look at them, I have them side by side right here, they are essentially the same character. So that was kind of an issue for me, but for this specific game, I didn't have too much complaints with the villain. Of course, they did have kind of a stupid story. The story was very cheesy, it was just kind of dumb, but it kind of, I guess for the way that the story was going, it kind of makes sense unifying Shao Kahn and Darkseid. And one of the biggest issues with the game, of course, was the fact that the gameplay wasn't that fun, and it was the foundations for what Mortal Kombat 9 was going to become, but overall, it was just kind of slow to play, and it wasn't that, I don't know, it just wasn't that satisfying, realistically. Overall, it wasn't, like, awful for what it was, but it just wasn't that good. The gameplay in the game just wasn't that good, and unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of variety. Essentially, the only two modes there were was playing the classic arcade mode, playing the story mode, which is kind of boring, but kind of just, I guess, really the most fun part of it, and then having the whole combo mode, where you had to just do a bunch of very difficult combos to be able to complete it, get the achievement, and there's really nothing that they reward you with by completing it except for an achievement, which I guess is cool and all, but it's a big hassle, very, very difficult, and really almost impossible because a lot of times the button combinations, because the system was so poor, they just didn't really come off, and I was pretty much unable to do anything in those systems, and I'm not a very good Mortal Kombat player. I've always been honest about that. I'm not the best fighting game player around, nowhere near the best fighting game player around, but I was pretty much unable to do any of those combo challenges, which really annoyed me. but I guess it's only for the really, really dedicated fighting game fans. So the gameplay itself, apart from those modes, you just talk about the actual gameplay. It wasn't very good. Let's just be real. Like, it was the foundations for what Mortal Kombat 9 and Mortal Kombat X were to become, but it was very slow. It was just it felt very, very boring and very, very just non-fluid, and it just wasn't, it didn't flow well. So that was always kind of unfun to play. It was okay for the first few hours because there was some novelty to it, but once you kind of got used to it, it just wasn't very fun. I didn't like any of the 50-50, you know, where there was like falling off the map or something like that, and then if you hit the right button combination, then you could get a power boost or something like that. It was just, I didn't like that at all, to be honest with you. So I think that they got a few things right in terms of building the foundations for what the best games in the series arguably was to become, but a lot of what was wrong with this game was really, really poor. So overall, I just think that with my final thoughts, this game, it was basically a cash grab because Midway, or, you know, NetherRealm is what they became. They really, really needed money, and they really needed a way to be able to continue Mortal Kombat. So they did a very smart thing of actually connecting themselves to Warner Brothers, which of course bought them, and it became what Mortal Kombat is now. Because it was always popular back in the PlayStation 2 and of course the arcade eras, but they were never as mainstream as they are now. So thankfully, Warner Brothers, of course, they put us through this misery, but they allowed the Mortal Kombat franchise to grow and become a great series once again. So, a shit game, but I really do appreciate it because of what it led to. So I want you guys to let me know in the comment section down below what you think of Mortal Kombat vs. DC. Is it the worst Mortal Kombat game in the series? Because I think it is, and I kind of have a hard time even classifying it because realistically, it's not a classic Mortal Kombat game. It's just not what Mortal Kombat is, but it is technically part of this main series because it is Mortal Kombat, what, 7? No, 8, of course, Mortal Kombat 8, because it was before Mortal Kombat 9. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think of MK vs. DC. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and share the video. That's all very, very helpful, so thank you to anybody who does that. As always, big thanks and big shout out to every single one of my subscribers, every single one of you guys who continue to watch my content. Hit the like button and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thank you, especially to you guys. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.